Well, so much for easing into the old offseason here for the Colts. Let's go find a left tackle. Kevin Bowen back, another edition of Kevin's Corner. We are, 72 hours, I guess, into the offseason for the Colts, and the most important player on the football team, most indispensable player on the football team, as you guys have heard me reference for the last 2 years, is no longer going to play the game of football. Anthony Castonzo announces his retirement on Tuesday morning, and one of the key off-season questions, dominoes, has fallen. And about the only positive of it is he did it on January 12th. And now you have plenty of time to kind of shift and alter the plan for this 2021 massive offseason. So a little bit of emergency pod today. Won't be very long, just all Castonzo-centric. I've probably got a handful of people that have DM'd me in the last hour or two with some Castonzo thoughts and questions. So we'll hit on those and then come back. It looks like late Thursday afternoon. Chris Ballard's going to talk at his season-ending presser. I think it's 1 o'clock on Thursday. So Chris Presley and I will be back again late Thursday afternoon, recapping everything that the GM has to say. Let's start with Castonzo. Again, Tuesday morning, released a statement. And it just goes to show you, whenever you see Frank Reich, Chris Ballard, Jim Irsay quotes all in the same press release, that usually is an indicator of what the organization thinks of that player. And he is certainly a pillar, I think was the word that Ballard used, and that is very accurately stated. I'm not shocked by any means on this decision. I think two things stood out to me with the Castonzo just lingering cloud that he later admitted, and we talked to him a little bit earlier in the afternoon. This thought kind of always hung with him. He was glad that he came back. He was glad that he played in 2020, but the thought of retirement never really stopped for him. And I think part of that was just the lingering sort of COVID situation. Honestly, Castonzo was probably one of the Colts that debated opting out the most, and certainly has taken COVID extremely seriously. And so if that's going to impact, his training regimen for 2021 or OTAs or, who knows what the offseason program is going to look like for the NFL this year, that probably, played into it a little bit. He did say he talked to Andrew Luck and Jack Mewhort, and everyone can freak out about Andrew Luck, oh my gosh, he told AC to retire. Shut up. But I do think that, played a little bit into it. And, he kept on using the phrase like he couldn't get a clear picture of the process of football. And that might sound like super in-depth, and it is, but that's AC. He's a very intellectual human being. He loves the process of football, loves training, and he's such a technician at it. And I think once he lost sight of that, or maybe, again, just wasn't as clear of a picture, that's what contributed to him. And then he did admit that the injuries that he suffered this season, the most injury-riddled season of his career, the rib injury, the sprained MCL, and then the offseason surgery that he will need on his ankle, he said that was kind of the extra punctuation on this decision for him. So Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, no need to try and talk him out of this. There was pretty strong conviction from AC on this decision, and again, something that he felt and pondered last year. Decided to come back, $16 million in cap space. It does free up for the Colts for those looking for any sort of positives, but that's about it, because now it adds such a big piece that must be addressed right here, right now. This isn't something you can put off. This is not Castonzo on 1 year deal and you can play with fire and try to survive another offseason and season. No. You made the mistake last year in not drafting a tackle, and now you have to make that move. And an outside name, or Quentin Nelson, is probably going to be your week one left tackle. Let's start here, just an appreciation for Anthony Castonzo. I don't know if I've stood on a table maybe more for a player in the history of this podcast than I have AC. There's a few of my colleagues, and no one maybe directly on the beat, but I've certainly gone on some radio shows that maybe have not appreciated Castonzo to the level that I have. I just think it's ludicrous that people didn't think as highly of him as they should have. Was he a top 3-5 tackle in the NFL? No. For the last decade, have you ever thought about who else should start at left tackle? No. I mean, that's so rare to be as reliable, consistent and dependable as he was. And then also, I just thought he set a great example for the rest of the offensive line. The numbers speak for themselves. I crunched them a little bit earlier today, and I will give them to you now. The Colts' record with Castonzo, regular season, 79-65. So that's a win percentage of 548. That equates to about a 8 or 9 win season. Colts points scored per game, 23.4 when Castonzo was in the lineup. The win percentage without him, again, that is 16 career games. So he played 144 of 160 games. He really played every game of, I think it's like 6 seasons, and then just kind of had a few other seasons where he'd missed like 3 or 4 games. But without Castonzo in the lineup, the Colts were 4-12 in the regular season. That is a 250 win percentage. So basically, if you look at that win percentage, it's about a 300-point difference. That is the difference. And Castonzo on the field is like winning 8 or 9 games, and Castonzo off the field is like winning 4 games for an entire season. I mean, that to me is like one player that plays on your offensive line is worth 4 to 5 wins if you extrapolate that out for an entire season. It's crazy. And then you look at the points. I mentioned 23.4 when he's on the field, 20.4 when he's off the field. So, again, this is a guy that certainly the win-loss record speaks for itself. And, I mean, in today's NFL, one player mattering 3 points, I mean, shit, you don't have to look very far. Look at Saturday when you didn't have Castonzo in the lineup. That's finishing off one red zone drive. And I know that's kind of a very sore subject, so I hate to drive that point home right now, but I think it's needed to be driven home. And I think hopefully the emotional toll has waned a little bit for fans. But if not, it just goes to show you again what Anthony Castonzo has meant to this franchise since being drafted in 2011. He told some great stories. He's such a candid guy, great individual. He told some great stories about facing Dwight Freeney in training camp in 2011, and he thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to last in this league at all. And he said he would have laughed if someone told him he was going to play a decade in the NFL after that 2011 training camp. And Robert Mathis had a tweet today about, kind of going from a young pup to an absolute dog. I tweeted out a side-by-side picture of Castonzo in his 2011 training camp versus him later in his career. And his look is so drastically different from, kind of the shaved head, bald head, almost you call it, in 2011 to what he played with kind of his last handful of years, and he did become, one of the more durable and consistent left tackles in the league. I remember asking Quentin Nelson this time last year about Castonzo, and when you get Quentin talking about other players, he actually has a really, really insightful quote, and I thought it really told the story of Quentin's first 5 games of his rookie season playing, next to, gosh, I'm trying to think, was it Jamarcus Webb and like LaRaven Clark in that 2018 season when Castonzo, remember, injured his hamstring a couple times and aggravated it, so missed those first 5 games. And Nelson's quote was this: "My rookie year, there was a big difference. The first 5 games playing without him to when he came back. It's been awesome playing next to him. He's such a selfless guy in the way he plays. He'll do anything to make my job easier, and I just appreciate him. His work ethic, the way he comes in every day, and sets a great example for a lot of the young guys on this team. And we have a young team, so he sets a great example for all these guys. He's a very valuable guy." And I know some might just kind of scoff over that quote and, oh, yeah, it's just a player talking about a teammate. But I just think specifically you've got to kind of look into that, and there's a lot of merit to what Nelson said and really the example he sets. I mean, this is a technician. Like, if you watch him on the practice field, he'll come out there, and he won't be lazy, and he will not act like he's been out on the practice field 300 times in his NFL career. He is working his craft, and he loved, and it's always weird when you use past tense talking about players that have retired, but he loved to drill and train and perfect things. That's him. That's the Boston College in him. That's the Silicon Valley, sort of internships that he's done in past off seasons. He had a great quote today about just letting his brain kind of live and breathe. That's what he's going to do in retirement and kind of see what's going to naturally happen. He did say, maybe at some point down the road he might get into scouting. He does love that part and did a little bit of that with Ed Dodds, the assistant GM, over the past few years, just kind of getting scouting reports on players around the league that Castonzo would face. But yeah, I think he's a brilliant mind and just super, super wants to know the why and the how. And I think that is what, certainly gravitated a guy like Andrew Luck and him together. But yeah, just a great individual. I'll never forget, boy, this had to be maybe, 2007, 2008. Going to the Notre Dame Boston College football game. I think Matt Ryan was BC's quarterback. BC just kicked Notre Dame's ass, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, that's too aggressive. I think it was maybe a 2-score game, but it certainly felt like Notre Dame ran out of the building. But I happened to be, I think I was sitting with my good friends, Holton Whitaker and Tyler Keever, and maybe even Jason Seward as well. And we happened to be sitting next to Anthony Castonzo's parents at that game. And I'll never forget how frightened his mom was, because AC went to a prep school. I think it was Forky Union, if I'm not mistaken. And he started as a true freshman at right tackle at Boston College and weighed like 260. And she was just so frightened that, oh my gosh, that's my baby out there. And they were from the Chicago area. And I know his parents, I think, went to honestly every NFL game that AC played, or at least the vast majority of them, no matter where the game was played. But just so nervous that, like, oh my gosh, how's he going to hold up? These are grown 22-year-olds that have been in weight rooms for, X amount of years, and here's my 18-year-old son and all this, and he'd given up all this weight compared to most offensive linemen. But ended up being, a 4-year starter and was the last, real, I think, draft pick of that Polian era to do anything, in the NFL. Ben Ajalana was also taken in the second round, that tackle out of, where did he go? He go to UConn maybe, and that certainly didn't work out. But Castonzo started 12 games as a rookie, and was supposed to be, kind of that new blindside for Peyton Manning, and ended up being Andrew Luck and on. I've certainly tried to make this clear to our listening audience just exactly what a Castonzo presence means to game plan. But I think you just have to reiterate it. Like, Frank Reich can probably count on one hand the times he's helped Anthony Castonzo. Honestly, maybe in Frank Reich's tenure here. Certainly in a season, or by far in a game. You just go to sleep Tuesday night, Monday night, getting ready to install an offensive game plan. And that running back or that tight end, they don't need a chip on that left side. You can let Castonzo be, and that's a luxury. And not only was he dependable from a durability standpoint, but on a third down in the red zone, when you want to use all your skill players, having 74 blocking the blind side is just such a benefit. And Reich made that very clear about how huge that was from a game plan standpoint. And think about just the revolving door that Castonzo had to deal with at so many of those other positions on the line. Really, until the Colts got Ryan Kelly, no one, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle, no one was a consistent starting presence on a multi-year basis. I'm talking probably 3 to 4 years throughout Castonzo's first 5 or 6 seasons in the league. Think about how much of a revolving door you had at left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle, really until you found Ryan Kelly in 2016. But there was Castonzo, game in and game out, year in and year out, being there at left tackle. And now, of course, it comes down to, how do you replace that? What should and will the Colts do to try and fill, again, the most indispensable player on their roster? Quentin Nelson is the most obvious in-house choice to me. My hesitancy comes from this. We still have seen Quentin Nelson play, 10 snaps? Was it even 10 in that Raiders game? Those are the only left tackle snaps that kid has taken. And I say kid because he's younger than me, and I guess once you become older than people, you just call everyone kids. Since his high school days. We've talked about it. Mike McGlinchey and Zach Martin and Ronnie Stanley, there wasn't a need to play Nelson at tackle at Notre Dame. So he was a guard. And you've got to make some sort of projection if you're the Colts, because again, being a left tackle in practice is a little bit different than doing it in a game, and playing a little bit more in space is different as well. And I really think Nelson, we have to be honest too, he is a weapon as a run blocker, really from that guard spot. It helps you pull a little bit easier going to the right. Sure, you can still pull tackles, but it's not as frequent as you're pulling guards in the run game, and the Colts do that a whole lot. And I also think like defensive lines have grown over the years in the NFL to where, yes, you still want a great dominant left tackle, but now interior pressure is more immense. And even, there's pressure off the right side. Think about the Watt brothers. They both line up, opposite the right tackle a whole lot more than certainly moving over to the left side of that line. So I just think that that's some stuff to keep in mind. Now, Nelson, is a very good athlete. I thought he looked, fine there. And Castonzo said that he does think he has the skills to be a left tackle, in that Raiders game. But the advantage he does have is his body movements. And I guess just maybe, I don't know, a little bit of the muscle memory is used to playing the left side. He was a left guard at Notre Dame. Pretty sure he's a left guard, yeah. And a guy like Braden Smith flipping over, that is the muscle memory would be exact opposite. And again, Braden Smith was a right guard and a right tackle, I think, just for a game at Auburn. So you're asking him to flip sides, change a lot of that muscle memory, and then you, of course, just run into the situation where Quentin Nelson is a Hall of Famer at left guard. Braden Smith is one of the better right tackles in the league. Are you sacrificing something and moving one of those guys to left tackle to now they might be an average left tackle? And then the guy you plug in at right tackle or the guy you plug in at left guard certainly isn't going to be at a Hall of Fame level at left guard or one of the best right tackles in the league. So just those are all the dominoes you have to keep on thinking about. Now, does it make sense financially to pay Quentin Nelson the absurd amount of money you have to pay him, which rightfully so, and he's doing it at left tackle, and then Danny Pinter, who's a, fifth-round draft pick, can plug in at left guard? Sure. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, especially financially. And the financials of this is something you have to think about and project. But this is going to be difficult, folks. I mean, you're paying Quentin Nelson huge money very soon. You're going to pay Braden Smith big money. I think this offseason you should extend him. And then obviously Ryan Kelly is one of the highest paid centers in the NFL. And I guess that gets into the trickiness of if you go out and pay a left tackle in free agency. A lot of people throwing the name Trent Williams at me. I know Russell Okung, and I don't know if you got to give him a lot of Bitcoin to bring him here. Or, Villanueva from Pittsburgh, and I think Cam Robinson, I believe, is a free agent from Jacksonville. Joe Haig is also a free agent, although I don't think he has a whole lot of experience at left tackle. So that's just the difficulty of going out there, finding a veteran. Now, at the same time, finding a rookie is no easy thing, and finding a rookie that is a plug-and-play guy from day one is no easy thing. I mean, listen to Castonzo talk about it, and that was a decade ago. Now you have college offenses that certainly don't come from a lot of the same pro-style systems that did even a decade ago. So I think those are some things that you have to keep in mind as well. But man, just a huge, huge loss from a game plan standpoint. And gosh, think of that. Think of that win-loss record that I just talked about. The difference in an 8 or 9 win season versus a 4-12 football team. One player, one non-quarterback. That's Castonzo. All right, we got a handful of questions that I wanted to get to. Like I was saying earlier, Chris and I will be back Thursday afternoon recapping what Chris Ballard has to say at his season-ending presser. But just all Castonzo Pacific stuff. I know a ton of you have sent me podcast questions over the last few weeks. I got a big running log, and at some point, we'll get to all of them. But it's kind of the off season. If they're not time sensitive, there's no need in putting them into pods just yet. So let's start here with Scotty. Scotty says, "Hi Kevin. If the Colts want to draft the QB of the future, in my view, you have to move Nelson to left tackle. Draft capital isn't there to get good or great at both. Thoughts?" Yeah, I probably wholeheartedly agree with you there, Scotty. I mean, this is what makes this thing so complicated and difficult, is that finding a long-term solution at left tackle, in a way, is very similar to finding a long-term solution at quarterback. And really, to be fair, finding a long-term solution at virtually any position in free agency is difficult. But, it can be done. And, the Colts have gotten, 3 really good seasons out of a guy like Danico Autry as a starter defensive line. That's rare to find at left tackle or quarterback in free agency. So if you are going to do something and it doesn't involve draft picks, it's got to be Nelson, in my opinion. It has to be Nelson. Now, I'll say this, Scotty. Can you develop a second or third rounder at left tackle? If you trade up for a quarterback, do you trade up future picks? And maybe you still have your current kind of 2021 haul, which, again, and I posted this in a story on 1075thefan.com earlier in the day, the Colts don't have that extra second-round pick this year. And major credit to Chris Ballard for the assembling of draft capital that he did in recent years. But 2018, you traded back to the Jets, so you had that additional 2018 pick from the Jets. 2019, you had that other second-rounder that you got from the Jets. And then 2020, you had the additional second-rounder from Washington when you traded out of the first round then and took Rock Ya-Sin, early in that 2020 second round. So, or 2019 second round. So, when you only have 7 draft picks, that is something that, you just have to keep in mind. And it complicates things because, you still have edge rusher, you still have corner, you still have wideout. I mean, there are other positions as well, not just quarterback and left tackle related, that certainly are of priority this offseason. All right, Trevor says, do you think Big Q could actually want to move to left tackle because they typically make more money than guards as he's preparing for his next contract? Trevor, it's a good question. I'll say this. Quentin Nelson's going to make damn good money at left guard or left tackle. Damn good money. He might be the highest paid offensive lineman in the NFL at guard. And again, this kind of goes back to my earlier point. Like, guards are starting to make more money. The interior pressure, especially with quick rhythm quarterbacks, it's so key that, guards are viewed in a very, and I think a much higher light than we viewed them, 5 or 10 years ago. And even Peyton always said, it was the interior pressure that really got to him. He can step into a throw if it's edge pressure and step into the pocket as long as that's clean. But when you muddy up that interior pocket and your quarterback's not very mobile, that's where you run into issues. Unfortunately, I tried to request Quentin Nelson late in the year once he played out at tackle, and unfortunately he was not made available to the media. So we don't really know Nelson's own thoughts. Obviously, he's talked to Castonzo about it, so you have to think there's some interest. I mean, for what it's worth, his mom favorited a tweet about, Quentin playing left tackle. So, boy, that couldn't be more of just, let's read into the favorited tweets from family members. That sounds like just a horrific idea. But, yeah, I just said it, so there you go. I don't know. It's, Nelson probably looks at it as well and has to look in the mirror and think, boy, do I want to be a Hall of Fame guard and one of the best ever? Or do I want to take a chance, go play tackle, but I might not be known as that level of a left tackle? Yeah, those are some interesting thoughts there that you have to think about. All right, Brennan, you think any chance of Braden Smith could switch to left tackle? Gave up 0 sacks this year, and it would be easier if we draft a rookie tackle to put them at right tackle. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that last part. It probably is easier to put a rookie tackle at right tackle. But I go back to what I said earlier about Braden is so, his body only knows, really, the all right side, lower body movement, right hand dominant movement. That's how his pass sets are. That's how he is as a puller. That's how he is as a run blocker, coming out of his 3-point stance, all of it, 2-point stance. I mean, all of it is right side driven. So I think you have to keep that in mind as well. Part of me honestly thinks it's just you're going to have to hit on a draft pick. And I don't know, maybe the Nelson thing will work out And that would be, I think, ideal because, again, you have Pinter in-house to where it could be Danny Pinter at left guard, Ryan Kelly at center, Mark Lewinsky still under contract, him at right guard, and then obviously you're leaving Nelson and Braden Smith there. But again, hitting on a rookie is no guarantee, and hitting on a rookie right away is a huge need. But I don't want to lose sight of this. Like, don't think for a second I think left tackle is a bigger need than quarterback. Like, yeah. Quarterback. I mean, like that, no. Yes, you have to find a left tackle, but a damn good quarterback can help you mask some things. Mitchell, since Castonzo is gone, I think the perfect free agency signing over the offseason would be left tackle Trent Williams, quarterback Matthew Stafford, wide receiver T.Y. Hilton, and Kenny Galladay. Since Stafford knows him, and then as a wild card prediction, the Colts sign a pass rusher. I need your thoughts on this. Always love the pod. Well, Mitchell, first, I'd love to see the financials and how all that played out. Yeah, what about Xavier Rhodes? What did you do on the D-line? Justin Houston, free agent. Denico Autry, free agent. Yeah, I think you got to be very realistic there. You know, with the Hilton Galladay thing, yeah, in a perfect world, you would have the ability to sign both. But I mean, financially and just resource-wise, I think that's more of a Madden thought than an actual execution thought. First off, does T.Y. and Kenny Galladay both want to be here, along with Pittman and Campbell seemingly, coming up. So a lot of that sounds great. A lot of it makes sense, honestly, but financially, that's just difficult. Again, you have to think about all of that. Okay, Wyatt. Is AC the best player in history to never make a Pro Bowler? A Pro Bowl. Yeah, Wyatt, I'm not going to act like I know all the biggest Pro Bowl snubs of NFL careers, but I'll just say this, Anthony Castonzo to me was definitely a snub. I wasn't shocked by it. The guy's not on social media. The guy's not some hothead by any means. He's not a, big-time talker. It's, he's kind of flies a little bit under the radar. And so, and in general, he played on some poor offensive lines, in that Andrew Luck era. So I think there's just a little bit of a stigma there of like, you look at Cleveland Browns, you look at the Baltimore Ravens, those guys, this year, Pittsburgh as well, have kind of gone to the Pro Bowl because I feel like at least the public perception is they're on great offensive lines and they need multiple guys to go in there. There was some debate about Castonzo in the Ring of Honor. I can't go Ring of Honor. Joel Erickson, a colleague of mine, brought up a great point about, the Colts could maybe use a Hall of Fame and then a Ring of Honor as well, just to kind of separate some things. And, Castonzo's a damn good football player. Great 10-year career. Whatever that step below the Ring of Honor is probably the group that I would have him in. And Castonzo, and I thought he had a great quote. I tweeted it out and I put it on Instagram as well. Great quote about just the city of Indianapolis, what it meant to him to play here for all 10 of his NFL seasons. And I had the pleasure of going to Riley Hospital a few times with Castonzo and a few Colts, Andrew Luck and Joe Wrights and a few other guys that did the caroling at Riley Hospital in the month of December. And oh my gosh, Castonzo lived for that. Oh, he loved that so much. I think his presence, honestly, brought Andrew, out a little bit of a, hey, I can just do, can be my normal self here and be fun and goofy. And the kids just absolutely loved it. And Castonzo just poured his heart into that community event. I thought that was always kind of a fun day to see AC and his element. He didn't seek out the microphone or very boisterous, but boy, when he got going, I mean, again, super intellectual, great talker and everything. And I have no doubt that he will be a brilliant, brilliant mind in whatever he decides to do post-football. So that kind of wraps up, Anthony Castonzo retirement pod. Just a huge, huge offseason need. And I'll say what I've said before. I thought it was a mistake last year to go through the entire draft, especially, in the year prior when you didn't draft a tackle till the 7th round. I thought you played with fire kind of as a backup tackle and really pushed all your chips into Anthony Castonzo fulfilling this 2-year contract. When a guy starts to ponder retirement, that's the red flag. It's a 2-year contract, but I think you had to be honest with yourself, especially once the COVID stuff started to happen. Then you can come back in the draft kind of late April. And I thought drafting a tackle was more important than drafting an interior guy as well. So now that need is just massive. I mean, it's when you talk short-term need for this football team, man, there's so many at the premium spots. And this is something I do want to talk about a little bit more kind of on future pods of you hear a lot about, and I've said this, the foundation is very, very solid. And I believe that, and I will continue to stand by that. But the foundation at critical spots, that needs renovating. And it needs renovating almost right now. And if it doesn't get the renovating right now, it certainly needs it very, very soon as well. So in an ideal world, Quentin Nelson would probably be your left tackle of the future and would play at a very, very high level. In a financial world, that makes some sense. Also, just finding a left tackle on a rookie contract would help. And can you get, what Cleveland maybe has gotten out of Jedrick Wills, in this rookie season? That would be great. But again, Wills is what? Top 15 pick. So that's just the corner that you've kind of been put in by this decision here, and just the lack of in-house guys that could, potentially bump up, or, a little bit more of a passing of the torch sort of situation here in Indianapolis. So appreciate everybody tuning in to this edition of Kevin's Corner. Again, we'll be back late Thursday afternoon. Got a couple articles up on the site about the Castonzo retirement and exactly what the Colts are losing, what it means. And we'll get into maybe weighing some of the pros and cons of these other decisions here in the days and weeks to come. So everybody have a great week, and talk to you on Thursday.